Okay, excellent, cool. Well, seriously, I love it when it's this size because what we get to do is answer specific questions. Some of you are already on the cutting edge of some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. So from a technology standpoint, I think you'll be fascinated with the technology, but also what the technology can do. Because when I wrote Go Mobile 3 or 4 years ago, everybody said, oh, it's coming out at the exact right time because mobile's so big. Remember when everybody was saying this is the year of mobile, and they said it for like 5 years in a row? Well, I missed that by about 2 years. I was still 2 years too early because everybody said this is the year of mobile. And what was going on was the big companies like Coca-Cola were doing mobile, but the SMBs, 85% of all businesses in the United States are SMBs, weren't doing mobile. And they're still really not. So there's and part of the reason for that is the technology is a little intimidating to people. With social media, when I wrote the book on social media, it was going haywire. Why? Because SMBs were like, oh, I can do LinkedIn, I can do Facebook, I can do Twitter. That was not intimidating. On the other side of the spectrum is mobile, which does have a lot of technology behind it, so people get a little bit nervous about it, which puts you guys in a good spot, because you can be the go-between between the mobile technology and the client, and that puts you in a very, very good spot. Come on in, Michael, join us. This is Michael Reddig. He's with a company called Hotspot Revenue. I mentioned Hotspot Revenue to some of you. In fact, Kwame right here, Michael, knows about you guys already, so he must be seeing the advertising campaign that you guys are running and stuff like that. And then Kip also has a similar technology. We'll talk about Hotspot Revenue a little bit here just so that you can understand what it's all about. Don't be intimidated by Michael. The orange shirt and all that sort of stuff is just. I know. It would have been good. We would have matched. We probably actually look pretty good standing next to each other. So we'll have to do that for photos. So let's take a look. I've written a couple of books, as mentioned. I've helped a couple of clients that you'd be familiar with. I get on TV sometimes. Funny quick story about the CNN stuff. It's a good gig. They have you on. They'll call you up. Typically, they'll give me a buzz on like a Thursday and say, can you come on Saturday morning? The answer is always yes. They'll send a car for you. You get in the car. It's typically early in the morning. Get down there. They got the whole makeup studio. Every time I go in, I say, make me look younger and add hair, and they've yet to do that. So unfortunately, I never get that, they never get the makeup exactly right, but it is a fun gig. But my number one thing that I love to do is help people like you guys figure out mobile, figure out social, figure out B2B lead generation, just figure out how to get people to buy more of your stuff. Here's why. There's always going to be products and services, and there's always going to be clients and customers. There's always going to be a need for a bridge between those two things. So even though the agency and marketing world is in a constant evolution and things are constantly changing, the good news is there's always going to be products and services. There are always going to be customer prospects. We can bridge those two things. So sometimes we'll do it through mobile, sometimes we'll do it through digital, sometimes we'll do it through social, sometimes we'll do it through traditional media. But the key thing is that we're going to use that media to connect the two, and that results in revenue, which is always a good thing. So let's do some math. Here's an interesting thing for everybody in the audience. I'm going to ask you to do some math. So is anybody horrible with math in here? Yeah, I know. That's why you were in video. So I get it. Don't worry. I was bad with math. It's going to actually be pretty easy. So, but it gives an example of one of the things that we do in marketing and what the purpose of marketing is. So everybody in the room, pick a number between 1 and 10, and then just kind of nod when you get the number. Multiply that number by 9. So you were the first one to, so that's the hardest part on the math. So you're well ahead of everybody else. Kwame's he's got to get a calculator because he's from Georgia Tech, so he's back there getting a calculator. So you picked a number between 1 and 10, you've multiplied it by 9, now you have a new number. If either keep that number, if there are 2 digits in that number, add the 2 digits together, okay? So now you have another number, right? Now take that number and subtract 5. Now you have a new number. Now correlate that with a letter in the alphabet, A being 1, B being 2, C being 3. Okay, so now everybody has a letter. Now think of a country that begins with that letter. Go to the second letter in that country's name. Think of an animal that begins with that letter, and think of a color you associate with that animal. And raise your hand if you're thinking of a gray elephant in Denmark. Isn't that wild? So we got 80% of the room saying yes to that. Isn't that weird? So,
in Denmark?
Yeah. What, yours was pink?
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? Pink elephant. Interesting. Well, I guess that would make sense because they're pink elephants. Okay, gotcha. I mean, in fantasy world. So here's the reason I do that. So imagine, I do speeches around the globe. Sometimes we'll have 1,000 people in the audience. Imagine when 800 out of 1,000 people raise their hand and say, I got a gray elephant in Denmark. It's really, really interesting. The point I'm trying to make is, that's what marketers are trying to do all the time, is take big groups of people with diverse backgrounds, different thoughts, different histories, different tastes, and get them to behave in a similar fashion. So just like I got 80% of the room to think of a gray elephant in Denmark, you can get 80% of the people buying your product or service, you're golden. In fact, if you can get 10% of the people doing that, you're golden too. So what's interesting on that is Coca-Cola, of course, is one of the world's great branding experts, and they take that kind of knowledge. If we can get more people to pick Coke over Pepsi, then we win the competition. They go in, there was a study down at Baylor University, and this does lead to mobile, by the way. There's a study down at Baylor University. They went into a room just like this, had 100 people in the room. They put a blind taste test in front of everybody. So what's a blind taste test? No wrong answers. Go ahead. You taste something, you don't know what it is. There's no product imagery on the thing. So they give Pepsi and Coke to everybody. It's a blind taste test. What do you think the results were out of a room of 100 people? Pepsi, maybe. It was 50-50. Half the room like Coke, half the room like Pepsi. So we already know the room doesn't really care. It's 50-50. Then they go into the same room, say take away the Coca-Cola or the two products. We're going to put now a Coke bottle in front of you and a Pepsi bottle in front of you. Now we want you to take a sip of each one. Guess what the results were? 80% liked Coke. So what is that all about? Why is it that 80% of the room chose Coke over Pepsi when they knew the brands, but when they didn't know the brands, they didn't care? What's the reason? Well, no, this was down in Texas. So but you know the reason, the branding, exactly. So tell me the words and phrases and things you associate with Coca-Cola. Just go ahead and shout it out. Coke and a smile. Like to teach the world to sing. Is that? Yep. Anything? Share a Coke. It's the real thing. What about images too? Polar bears. Good. Michael. Santa Claus. People's names, yep, happiness, all that stuff. Do the same thing with Pepsi. What's the story with Pepsi? What are the words and images you associate with Pepsi? New generation. What? Michael Jackson, exactly. So you guys tell me which goes deeper and is more deeply ingrained, Michael Jackson or Santa Claus? And the bottom line is Santa Claus goes way deeper. So when people say that the Coke tastes better, and they do studies, they do MRI exams on people's brains, when they say that Coca-Cola tastes better, it's not really that Coke tastes better, because we know when it's a blind taste study, it's 50-50. What it is that the imagery around Coca-Cola makes it actually taste better. So that's the weird thing, is the part of your brain that lights up that says this actually does taste better is reflecting the actual total experience. And the net is Coke sells more than Pepsi, which is why Coke is the #1 brand in the world. What's the #2 brand? No. Diet Coke. The #3 brand is Pepsi. So Coca-Cola has the first 2 spots because of all the things. Because when you associate Santa Claus versus Michael Jackson, it goes through very, very subconscious stuff, makes us have preferences. So the reason I mention all that is some of the stuff we're going to talk about today is about marketing. It's about using mobile technology to get people to buy products and services that you want them to buy. So also, when you think about what goes on in the brain when people buy stuff, it's all about creating an emotion. So part of the reason Coca-Cola makes their commercials either make you laugh or cry is because they want to create an emotion. Because when emotions happen, then people remember stuff. So which side of the brain controls emotions and which side controls logic? You guys tell me.
Logic, right?
That is correct. Excellent. Terrific. So what's interesting about that, did you know that there are 25% more connections in the female brain between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere than in the male brain? So women, that's what makes women smarter. Newsflash for you guys. You guys already know that. But the bottom line is women actually have more connections. Well, my wife tells me that all the time, so it's kind of embedded in my brain. But 25% more connections between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. In fact, if you look at this X-ray and you X-ray a female brain, you'll see more connections between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. So that's a female brain. Here's the male brain, which is kind of slightly different. Not quite as smart or as intelligent, but the bottom line is we really have 3 things on our mind. One is the game on, the second is the beer cold, and I'll I'll let you use your imagination for the third thing. So let's talk about mobile marketing. Mobile marketing actually is not that complex. When I sat down and wrote Go Mobile, I said, all right, I'm going to have to understand sort of the landscape of mobile marketing, so I'm going to talk about that in a second. I would like the woman who came in to introduce herself. We've already introduced ourselves down here. That's okay. Go ahead. What's your name?
My name's Mitch. Hi.
Mitch?
Yes.
Excellent. And then where do you work?
Down on Peachtree near the Hunting Museum.
Okay, excellent.
I have an agency.
Oh, good. What's the agency?
At Friend and Alligators, and we create marketing for law firms and professional services firms.
Cool, excellent. Actually, for anybody here who's in the agency business or linked to it, do this coming out of this conference. I just wrote a blog post called How to Save the Ad Agency Business. In fact, if you go in and Google How to Save the Ad Agency Business, it'll pop up. It goes through a real interesting spectrum that I do in terms of what's going on in the agency business, because it is changing pretty dramatically. And there's a methodology in there on how to go upstream and get out of the commoditized, project-based business that the ad agency business is becoming, and get more into strategic consulting about how to move the ball forward for larger things. So let's take a look at the things on mobile marketing. We have mobile websites, mobile apps, SMS, location-based services, QR codes, which can rest in peace, mobile paid search, proximity marketing, which is beacons, NFC, Wi-Fi, things like that, and then mobile display. We're going to talk a little bit about each one of these, and then take a deep dive into two things, proximity marketing as well as mobile display, because that's where the hyper-targeting comes in. There's some very, very cool technologies that are coming down the pike that are fascinating on that front. So does everybody in here have a mobile website, a mobile optimized website for your website? Okay, it used to be I'd do that and about half the room would say, what's a mobile optimized website? The other half of the room, but after the Google change, it happened I think in March of this year, basically the bottom line is everybody should have a mobile optimized website, and Google rewards that. It should load quickly, so it should be as flush as it possibly can be, so it kind of uploads quickly and gets the ball moving forward on that. So everybody's already in good shape on that front. The second thing is mobile apps. Funny quick story about mobile app development. And Kip, somebody's in the mobile app development business. Didn't somebody have an, no. Okay, gotcha. So you can do apps. I had a client prospect or a friend, an old friend, call me up. So my blog is called 60 Second Marketer, and it's got a global audience, and we talk about everything about marketing, mostly digital marketing. But we sit down, and I had a friend based out of Atlanta call me up, and she was like, "Jimmy, you got to get out here right away. We need a mobile app." And I said, "Well, okay, let me come out and visit you." She said, "You got to meet with my CEO. We got to get a mobile app." I'm like, "Okay, that's great, but let's talk about your goals and objectives." She said, No. We just got to get a mobile app. So, okay, let me come out. So I go out and meet with her. The CEO's in the room. CEO, we need a mobile app. We need a mobile app. I said, well, what are your goals and objectives? All right, well, we need to drive leads. And I said, well, then you don't need a mobile app. No, we need a mobile app. We keep hearing mobile apps are a big deal. I'm like, they are a big deal if you're Delta, if you're Coca-Cola, not if you're you guys and you're trying to acquire new customers. Mobile apps are great for customer retention. They're not great for customer acquisition. The difference, of course, being customer acquisition is let's go get more customers. How many times has anybody in this room downloaded a mobile app from a brand they weren't familiar with? Probably very rarely. Maybe Angry Birds, maybe some game, something like that. But the last time you downloaded a mobile app from a company that wants your business that you weren't already familiar with was probably never. So long story short is we went into them, said you really don't need a mobile app. What you need to do is sit down and think this through and use other mobile technologies in order to do it. By the way, at any point during this, please ask me questions and ask them specific to your business, because the best thing that I can do for you guys is to answer specific questions about your business. So stop me at any time. We'll go through it. We'll stop, and you'll learn more, and I'll help you more if you stop me at that time. So SMS is fascinating. It's like the technology that'll never die. I keep thinking, it's got to be the last days of SMS, and it just keeps chugging along, mostly because it's kind of an old mobile technology. So the bottom line is we all know what SMS is. Basically, people go into a store like a Subway store. They see a poster. It says, go ahead and fill out this short code, text it to us, we'll text you back. By law, they have to say, did you opt into this? Double opt-in. So by law, they have to go in and say, yes, I did opt in, because why? Because the people who own the keys to the kingdom, AT&T and Verizon, don't want you fucking with their customers, is the bottom line. And so the bottom line is they're going in and saying, hey, if you're going to use SMS, we're going to make sure that they're double opting in so that there can be no spamming. There's occasionally instances of spam on SMS, but generally speaking, it's shut down pretty quickly because you don't mess with AT&T and Verizon. The net is it gives people the ability to go in and then connect with customers. Dentists use it to say, hey, don't forget about your appointment coming up pretty soon. All sorts of different kinds of companies use it. What's the show on that's there where they have the people come out and sing and dance and then they judge them? A famous show. It's like The Voice. What was the first one? America's Got Talent. Yeah, all that sort of stuff. But they used it as a way to, they used it on that show in order to get votes, things like that. So SMS refuses to die. It's not necessarily something that's really, really cutting edge, but there are some protections in place that make it less spammy than people probably imagine. Not for everybody, but interestingly enough, Subway in the United Kingdom did a promotion where they said, go ahead and text us, and we'll use geolocational targeting in order to give you an SMS message about an offer when you're near a Subway store. So basically, geolocational targeting is pretty simple. Triangulation, there's 3 cell phone towers wherever you're walking around. Those 3 cell phone towers are always kind of figuring out where you are. And by doing triangulation, they're able to say, oh, they're on the corner of Peachtree Street and 15th Street. Well, what happens is they take that data, and then they go in and they say, where are Subway locations? Take that and overlay it. And then they overlay on top of that more data that says, who's opted in to the promotion that we did, and they go, oh, there's 3 people near the Subway that have opted into the promotion that's on the Subway between Peachtree and 15th Street, and then they go ahead and text them that message, hey, come on in and go ahead and do this. So that's basically the fundamentals of geolocational targeting, and it's the foundation upon which we'll talk about some stuff here, but it gets more and more sophisticated as we go on. But if you understand that concept, then we can keep moving through. Everybody on board so far?
So that they triangulation from cell phone towers in order to find out where a particular person is?
Yes, but I'm going to say this. You're at Georgia Tech. All of a sudden I'm going, I hope that's the way they do it. Yeah, that's the way they do it. I mean, there's nothing, I didn't say anything that's contrary to what they're teaching you at Georgia Tech or when you were there. Okay.
SMS is not my problem.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. I was thinking, oh God, the guy, maybe they do it slightly differently, but the net is triangulation, cell phone towers go into it. Now, what we'll talk about in a minute takes that a step further and goes really, really deep with data. It's utterly fascinating stuff. Very, very cutting edge. It took me a year of trying to explain it to people. Their eyes would glaze over, and I finally figured out how to talk about it in a way that is digestible. But I can't tell you how many people I told about this, some of the technologies we're going to talk about, and they just didn't get it, and that's what we'll talk about in a second. So let's keep going. Location-based marketing is nothing other than Yelp. It's all the location-based services that are out there. Yelp, TripAdvisor, anything that combines mobile technology or apps combined with a location-centric necessity. So Yelp is, hey, the bottom line is do your ratings on here. Yeah.
Okay. Facebook ads,
I mean, you could, interestingly enough, location-based services, technically no. Normally you wouldn't put Facebook in there. But does Facebook have an app? Yes. Does Facebook use your location in order to send you specific messages? Yes. So therefore, you could argue that it's a location-based service. But really, location-based services are apps and technologies like that where they want to specifically say, you're in Atlanta, there's a restaurant right around the corner from you where you can go. So that's why Facebook kind of doesn't fall into this category. But that's a good question. Thanks for asking. As I said, stop me anytime, ask questions. So that's location-based services. QR codes, basically dead. Anybody in here in the last year scanned a QR code? Anybody? Excellent. So what'd you say?
my children do.
Your children do? Oh, good. Good, excellent. Well, there's still somebody doing it. I was doing this talk last year, and I was basically saying QR codes are on their way out, and some guy was like, don't say that. I was like, why not? He said, we've got a startup that's all built around QR codes. I was like, dude, I hate to tell you, man. Just pull the plug right now. Sad, but true. So let's keep on going. Mobile paid search is nothing other than paid search. It takes people's location and the mobile device into consideration pretty straightforward. You just click a button on when you're doing a Google paid search ad. Proximity marketing. How many people, raise your hand if you've heard of proximity marketing. Okay, what is proximity marketing? And there's no wrong answer. Well, Kwame, there were several people who raised their hand, but you try it.
Okay, proximity marketing based upon your location, whether you're in the vicinity of someplace.
Yep.
You'll get a text message, maybe a Bluetooth message.
Good.
Tell you that, okay, my product's here.
Perfect, wonderful. That's spot on, so you got it. So that's good news because proximity marketing is a burgeoning world. People know about proximity marketing more through the specific product that is surrounded by proximity marketing as opposed to the term proximity marketing. But if you look at the Google searches, more and more people are starting to wrap their minds around proximity marketing. So iBeacon, everybody heard of iBeacon? iBeacon is basically Apple's version of proximity marketing. The downside with iBeacon is that you literally have to opt in. You have to basically open up your browser or open up your phone, say, yes, I'm going to enable Bluetooth. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and open up this app that's now going to push a message on me. So it's basically saying, hey, can we trouble you to do 2 or 3 steps so that then we can annoy you with an ad for a product that you probably aren't interested in. It's it's really weird that iBeacon has gotten so much attention. Now, the flip side of the equation is everybody in this room has probably opened up their smartphone at one time or another and done a search for a product. You're in Target and you're like, oh, I can get product A or product B. Let me do a search and see what the reviews are. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a way to engage prospects at that moment of purchase and say, hey, by the way, you're thinking about these 2 products. We're Target. We actually have we actually want to push you towards this product, and you could inject a message into the browsing situation. So they open up Google, they open up their browser. There's just a little message down at the bottom that says, hey, buy product A versus product B. It's a really, really interesting thing. There's no login, there's no enabling anything, there's no approving apps to push messages to you. It's just there sort of unobtrusively and just says, hey, go ahead and do this. So that's what proximity marketing is. That version of proximity marketing I just described is Wi-Fi. And I'm going to, full disclosure here, Michael is a client of mine, of ours. I have a company, and his company is Hotspot Revenue. They do talking Wi-Fi. So I'm going to talk about talking Wi-Fi, but I just want to let you know, I do have a vested interest in the success of that company. Proximity marketing delivers the right message to the right person at the right time. So it doesn't matter if it's iBeacon, talking Wi-Fi, NFC, or anything. It's basically taking your location into consideration right at the moment of purchase so that when you're buying something, you get a message. Whether it's through iBeacon, any of the other technologies, doesn't really matter. The net is when people are at that moment of purchase, they are at a specific moment in time where they're making decisions about products. There's no better time than to be able to whisper in somebody's ear and say, buy product A, buy Coke versus Pepsi. If you catch them at the moment of purchase, that's great. Imagine being in a grocery store and they can tell, hey, they're in the Pepsi and Coke aisle. Hey, guess what? They're standing right, but Coke is 6 feet to the left, Pepsi's 6 feet to the right. Wouldn't it be great to say, let's give them a reason to go over to Coca-Cola by putting a coupon in their browsing session so that they go ahead and buy the Coca-Cola. A lot of interesting stuff going on that front. So proximity marketing includes beacons, near-field communications, geolocational targeting, and talking Wi-Fi. Geolocational targeting goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago. Just triangulation, zeroing in on the location of the person down to about a 5-meter area where they can go in and get pretty specific with it. Hotspot Revenue, if you want to learn more about proximity marketing, by the way, hotspotrevenue.com/proximity. There's a 12-page ebook on there that walks you through beacons, NFC, geolocational targeting, Wi-Fi, anything you need to know about it. At the end of reading that ebook, you're going to basically know everything you need to know about proximity marketing. You're going to be hearing more and more about this as time goes on. So if you like being on the cutting edge of technologies, it would be something you might want to do. Hotspotrevenue.com/proximity. Let's talk about mobile display. This is where the stuff gets really, really fascinating. Proximity marketing is very cool because you basically can target people at a moment of purchase. But what about if you had data on people's purchase behaviors, buying habits, and you could use that in order to persuade them to buy your product or service? Really, really cool stuff. Stay with me on this because it gets really, really geeky in a second, but it's pretty cool stuff. So on mobile displays, so mobile display is just banner ads, little banner ads. People go, do those things really work? Well, yeah, they actually do. They do work because people click through on them. Even though it's a small number, I think it's 0.05% of the people who receive a mobile banner ad actually click through on it. And about 30 to 40% of the time it's an errant click because they'll click immediately back out of it. It's just something people do where they go, whoops, wrong thing, I didn't mean to do that. But even then, it still pays for itself many times over because if you do the right targeting and the right tracking and the right execution, those three things right up here, targeting, tracking, and engagement, I said execution, then all of a sudden you've got something that works, engages people, and can get them to do stuff. So let's take a look at what this is all about. Targeting from a targeting standpoint. Imagine if you could target people based on their purchase behaviors and specific data around the purchases. That's pretty cool stuff. Let's take a look at it. In the old system, which was basically, let's run a mobile campaign in Atlanta, and we're just gonna do what's called spray and pray. It's just like run a campaign, we're just gonna, everybody who owns a cell phone, just run it out there. That's the most basic and fundamental way to do it. About 3 or 4 years ago, that's the way we were doing mobile display. It was just basically a shotgun approach. What we're gonna talk about here is you can take that shotgun approach and do something that makes it more of a rifle. It zeroes in and gets the target much more targeted. And then what's even cooler is then we can also track people and see if they actually bought the product on the other end of the equation. So imagine if you could go in to your clients and say, hey, I can show you how to run a mobile ad, then I can track the data to see if that person actually purchased your product at the grocery store or even purchased your product at, we were talking to the Atlanta Hawks about this, at the ticket booth. As long as they use a credit card and that data is trackable, which it is, then we're able to tell if it worked or not. So in the old days, targeting was down to demographics, location, context, and behavior. Let's just real quickly, what would demographics be? What's demographic targeting? Based on age, race, yep, great. So what would location-based targeting be? Kwame, you want to try that one?
Zip code.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. No, actually you could do that. You could say, hey, guess what? We sell yachts. We only want people within 5 miles of the coastline. Yep, we can do that, no problem. So that's location. Context, what does context mean in terms of mobile targeting? Anybody want to give that one a try?
It means that the medium that you're targeting, so like if you're going to put your banners on a certain website, you want that website to be about what the target is.
Exactly. So if you are selling tennis rackets, you want to be on tennis.com. That's contextual marketing. And then behavioral, which is basically when people are engaging with friends on Facebook, when they're doing certain behaviors, you can do it. Now what's interesting about all this is it gets even better, way better, and where I'm going with this, let me come back to that in a second. What's interesting is on desktop computers, when you visit a website, what happens to your browser? What gets planted on your browser to tell people where you've been? What's it called? Cookie, exactly. So what is the reason that we have cookies on your browsers? Why is that from a marketing perspective? Track everything you do. So it's why you're getting all the Viagra ads, right? Doesn't that totally make sense? Bottom line is it goes in and it says, hey, we know where you've been. Guess what Apple and Google have done with the browsers on a mobile device? They took the cookies out. So the bottom line is cookies are on there for a couple of weeks and then they're gone. So it makes it very, very difficult to really put behaviors together to figure out what people are interested in. So I know a little bit about your behavior. I know that you visit tennis.com and ESPN.com, you must be a sports fanatic, but I don't have a big, long history of your behavior. So it makes it very, very difficult for me to go and target you based on what you're doing. See, we're starting to get a little geeky here, but it's really cool stuff. So imagine what the impact that has for advertisers behaviors. Now I can't target people based on their behaviors. I don't know if they're interested in tennis rackets because they didn't go to tennis.com in the last 2 weeks because it's winter time. But winter time is when they're buying rackets for the spring and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of implications to this that really kind of fall by the wayside. So what happens is we have a series of technologies and techniques, my company, that goes out. Basically, we get data from companies. We get other techniques from other companies. And we package it up and we go in and we say, what if we could figure out where each mobile device was in the evening? What would that imply? That would say that mobile device lives at 123 Smith Street in the evening. That means that's where they live. And then 124 Smith Street lives here. 125 Smith Street lives here. So suddenly we're able to take data and tie it into residential locations, right? So take a look at this. Hyper-targeting based on purchase data means this. I know if I can track all the mobile devices through geolocational targeting, and then I can follow them around, and I see that in the evenings they're all located in these places, then I can make the assumption that that's where they spend the night, that's where they live. So now I know that 123 Smith Street, one cell phone is there, another cell phone is at 124, another cell phone is at 125. That's pretty cool in and of itself, but what if you could take the data that's around that and tie it to the cell phone? What do I mean by that? I can go in, you're picking up on this, I can go in, it's powerful stuff. I can go in and I know based on frequent shopper card data as well as credit card data that the person at 123 Smith Street buys Coca-Cola. I know that the person at 124 Smith Street buys Pepsi, and I know the person at 125 Smith Street doesn't buy any soft drinks at all, they buy Dasani. So I can go into Coca-Cola, and oh, by the way, I have, and say, hey, guess what? I can save you 30% right off the bat because I'm gonna cut 30% of the people who drink Dasani out of your advertising budget because you don't want to target them. They've never bought Coke or Pepsi. But I'm going to go into 123 Smith Street, and what's the message going to be on the banner ad for somebody who's a loyal drinker? Just, I mean, what would the ad say? Thanks for drinking Coke, right? What would the message be on if I'm Coca-Cola, what would the message be for the person at 124 Smith Street that drinks Pepsi?
50 cents off.
Bingo. 50 cents off. Switch over to Coca-Cola, we'll give you 50 cents off. Suddenly that's very powerful stuff, right? Number one, I'm saving 30%. I'm not spending money on a Dasani buyer. Number two, I'm going into the Coke buyer and saying, thank you for drinking Coca-Cola. And number three, I'm going into 124 Smith Street and saying, hey, 50 cents off if you buy Coca-Cola. What'd you say?
The thing is, like, you got the Pepsi buyer. Without them opting in, how do you reach them?
They don't have to opt in. That's the beauty of it. It's online display. So there's no opting in. It's just a banner ad that shows up. You're surfing ESPN.com, little banner ad that pops up. And if you drink Coca-Cola, it says, thanks Kwame for drinking Coke. If you drink Pepsi, it's a different ad. Please switch over to Coca-Cola and save 50 cents on it. Does that make sense? So it's just a banner ad. But the difference is two things. Number one, we can target very, very specifically. But number two, we can track your purchase and we can say, hey, look, Kwame went to the grocery store a week after we served him that ad and purchased Pepsi or Coca-Cola at the grocery store. We can also say he actually stuck with Pepsi even though we sent them the banner ad. Yeah?
So you're calling other data sources to connect the dots?
Correct. Isn't that cool? See, it took me 2 years to figure out how to explain this in a way that would get that reaction where your mouth just went, oh my God, that's amazing. It's amazing stuff. It's profound. It's changing everything because all of a sudden it saves the client money and it also goes in and basically targets people and makes the ROI that much better. Amazing, amazing stuff. So very, very cool stuff. So let's talk about fact or fiction. Fact or fiction is just some fun that we have, which is just a way to engage you guys on mobile and just have a little bit of fun. Fact or fiction, you guys tell me if this is fact or fiction. The scientific term for fear of losing your mobile phone is called aophobia. Raise your hand if it's a fact. Raise your hand if it's fiction. Okay, we got one fact, we got everybody else fiction. Interesting, it's actually fiction. But there is a term and it's called nomophobia, oddly enough, which is kind of interesting. Oh, what'd you say?
No mo phone.
Nomophonophobia. So far we've talked about targeting. How do you target people specifically with specific messages that are tied to their purchase behavior? Now we can do that. Now let's talk about tracking, which is the next part of the technology. If we can target them, then we can also start tracking whether or not they purchase stuff on the back end. And here's how that works. What's very, very cool about it is we can target them on a smartphone and then track them and target them again on a tablet and then go to a laptop and then go to a 7-Eleven. Here's how that works. So we've already talked about targeting. Now we're going to talk about tracking. Here's what we did for the Atlanta Hawks. They didn't run this campaign, but we talked to them about it. We were getting ready to run it, and then they said, hey, guess what? We're up for sale, so we're going to pause everything. But interestingly enough, what we said was we can send somebody who has a propensity to buy basketball tickets because we take data and we say, hey, data set, throw out everybody except the people who buy basketball tickets. Okay, cool, here's this data set. Now show us those people living in Atlanta who are in that data set. Gets a little smaller. Okay, cool. Now let's serve them an ad on their cell phone. Then we're also going to serve them an ad on their tablet, and we're going to serve them an ad on their laptop. We can now track all of that data and see where they go. And what's so cool is, let's say they end up, let's pretend for a second that this is a kiosk to buy Atlanta Hawks basketball tickets. As long as they purchase that basketball ticket with a credit card and don't do it with cash, which has got to be like 98% of the people, now we've got that data where we can go in and say, oh cool, we've got data. We can go back and figure out if they saw our ad earlier. And we can tie the two together. We can say they saw the ad, and we don't care if you picked up the phone and bought it. We don't care if you bought it at the kiosk. We don't care any of that. What we do care about is the net is that you're going in and buying the product at the end, and there's a credit card receipt tied to that. As long as there's a credit card receipt, we're in great shape. So it's really, really cool stuff and very, very cutting edge, very progressive stuff. So if you take a look at this, again, we'll target you based on your smartphone. Then you can go in and do visit the desktop mobile telephone. You can buy on any of these methodologies. We track it and then we report that back and say, guess what, it all worked. Very cool stuff. So the last one is engagement. As we're rounding the bend here, we'll talk just briefly about engagement. A lot of people are like, oh, those little banner ads that are on mobile devices, you know, how good can they be? How effective can they be? They are effective and they are good. The interesting thing is it's getting more and more engaging in terms of what they're allowing people to do on those banner ads. So it's not just a little banner ad, it's actually something that you click, and then based on that, it engages you as you look at the ad. So let's take a look at some of the options on the engagement front. Media Post reports that rich media ads have an engagement rate that's 26 times greater than traditional banner ads. What's rich media? Anybody want to volunteer that up? Yeah.
Ads that you can like hover over and they'll expand and like you can watch a video or interact with it.
Yep, exactly. It's an ad that just engages you, has video in it, whatever it is. Second bullet point, other studies indicate that the engagement rate is a more accurate measure of a campaign's future success than a click-through rate. What do you think I mean by that? The engagement rate versus click-through rate. The engagement rate is more important than the click-through rate. The click-through rate is, did they click on the ad? What's the engagement rate? Yeah. Yep, exactly. Time spent viewing. The engagement rate is time spent viewing. Is did they engage with the ad? Did they shake it and make it do something? Did they turn it upside down like that to use some of the technologies to have some fun with it? Did they watch a video on it? That's the engagement rate. The higher the engagement rate, the more successful the campaign. You can have a super high click-through rate and a low engagement rate and have a low ROI. You can have a low click-through rate and a high engagement rate and a high ROI. And it's always all about ROI at the end of the day. So there's a bunch of different things that you can do on mobile ads. There's sequential ads, click to expand, auto expand. Basically what that is this is just sort of the standard thing. Click here, boom, that opens up, it expands the page, and basically you can see the ad. That's pretty standard. There's gallery and carousel, which is, hey, look, here's the ad up here at the top. Yeah, it's tiny, it's very small, but people click on it. And then what do? They go here and they see a map of the location of the store, as well as what's sold at the store, and they can flip with their finger and just flip through and say, oh, there's a bunch of different lawnmowers on for sale. That's called gallery. Native ads, which is a really big deal right now, of course, is embedded advertising. advertising that becomes part of Facebook or anything like that, all designed to be engaging in part of the whole medium, the channel that's being used. Store locator ads and distance locator ads. You can have an ad that pops up and it says, where is Colgate? Hey, guess what? You can go get Colgate. You can buy Colgate toothpaste 1.2 miles away from where you're located right now. So you can do that kind of stuff too. Hotspot ads, games, things that make basically people can swipe their finger over the screen and scratch and sniff. You can do that. Or you can make games where they can move pieces of a puzzle. Again, the engagement rate is more important than the click-through rate. The more engaging an ad is, the more likely you're going to have a positive ROI. You can use the accelerometer. You can swipe to rotate. You can use inline banner video ads. You can do all sorts of things to get people to engage with the ads and basically kind of do stuff that makes them do it. So let's do a quick recap as we're rounding the bend. If you have any questions, just pause, raise your hand, ask me questions, but I'm going to just do a quick recap. Mobile websites, we talked about that, everybody has one. Mobile apps, probably something that you don't need, if anybody tells you you do. Doesn't mean you for sure don't need one, but it's something that you should think long and hard about. SMS, which is texting, we know about that. Location-based services, QR codes, kind of gone. Mobile paid search. Proximity marketing, as we mentioned, beacons, NFC, Wi-Fi. Just go, again, to hotspotrevenue.com/proximity, 12-page ebook, gives you the whole scoop. And if you're into cutting-edge technologies, you should know about proximity marketing, because in a year or two, everybody's going to be talking about it, and you guys are going to go, man, I've been known about proximity marketing for a long time. Mobile display at the end is what we're talking about, where we can do that targeting stuff and tie it to actual purchase data, which is really, really fascinating, a game-changing technology. So last, fact or fiction real quickly. Fact or fiction, Harris Interactive reports that 20% of those surveyed have used smartphones during sex. Who says that's a fact? Who says it's fiction? Michael, he has a...
It's got to be higher.
Yeah, it's got to be higher. There he goes. It is a fact. 20% of adults say they've used mobile devices during sex. It raises all sorts of questions. I'm not even going to go there. So net is action steps for everybody in this room coming out of here. A couple of things I'd encourage you to do. Number one, people talk about mobile technology a lot and they don't use it as much as they need to. When you see a banner ad, click through on it. See what the experience is like. When you see a mobile paid search ad, click through on it. See what the experience is like. Scan a QR code if you want to, kind of do a legacy thing. But use mobile marketing. The more you use it, the more likely it is you'll be able to understand it. Keep an eye out for things like beacons, talking Wi-Fi, all that stuff on the proximity marketing side of the equation. That's the last mile. We've already been using social media to engage people, then we're starting to use mobile marketing to engage people. The last mile is that proximity marketing. It means I'm right at the moment of purchase, and if I can capture somebody's attention right at the moment of purchase, I can increase my ROI. Think of the impact that has in retail stores, think of the impact that has at coffee shops, think of the impact that'll have at anything where people are at a moment of purchase and you can persuade them to, they're on the fringe, should I go with product A or product B? Boom, hey, guess what? Go with product B, there's a 10% discount. Boom, suddenly you got a big ROI on the back end of that. My name's Jamie Turner. I've got a podcast called The Jamie Turner Show. You can catch me on CNN sometimes. I also have a couple of books out, one called How to Make Money with Social Media, the other called Go Mobile. You can also reach me at my business. I have 60 Second Marketer, which is an online magazine for marketing professionals around the globe. I get to go around the world speaking about marketing and stuff like this, typically to audiences slightly larger than this one. And then there's also another thing, which is 60 Second Communications, which is a marketing optimization company. We go into corporations and help them improve their marketing by 10% or more by showing them methodologies and things like I talked to you about today on how to improve it. Any questions before we wrap up? Yeah?
I was just curious, so the whole thing is really predicated on the user having geolocation enabled on their devices.
No. The question was, so the whole thing is predicated on the user having geolocation enabled. Your phone is always geolocation enabled. Now you can say to certain apps, do you want to tell CNN.com your location? You can opt out of that, but we actually know where your phone is at all times because of the data that we get from other methodologies.
What about laptop? You lost me with the iPad.
Great. Yep. So the question was, how does that technology work on the laptop side of the equation? We go in, we serve an ad to a mobile device. We know where that mobile device is located because of the technology that we have. We also know where the laptop is located because of various technologies on that side of the equation. So we tie the two together and we say, okay, we served it there, we served it there, we served it there, and then they went and bought the ticket at the booth, but they used their credit card. We know that we served them those ads. So there's a way to tie all that data together. What'd you say? Oh, okay. So I'll say it again better. So I apologize for not being clear, but I'll make it clear. We know where your smartphone lives. We also know where your laptop lives. And so then we tie that together and we say, hey, guess what? We served an ad to that. We don't know your name, we know your data point. And so we served an ad to you. And then we can tie that together because we served an ad to your smartphone, we served an ad to your laptop, and we have that data in the cloud, and then we go, did that person who got that ad buy what we sold, what we sent the ad about? And it's like, yeah, they use their credit card at the grocery store. Ching. So that's how it works. Cool. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mobile display works great with smartphones, but what about phones that aren't smart?
It does not work on dumb phones. But the good news is those are going away. So we're.
What, 40% of consumers have smartphones now?
It's more like 64%. Yeah. He was the geek that sat at the front of the class and had all the right answers. Cool. Any other? Yeah, Tiffany. So basically what you just said is, Jamie, when you started talking about yourself, I tuned out completely because it was boring as all get out.
Does your company provide services like this to larger businesses or businesses of all sizes? Like we normally just work with SMBs, and so they obviously have some budget constraints to their campaign.
Yeah.
So we're doing a lot less money, but is it something that smaller companies can still do? Is it really more for
It is for all size companies, but typically you're going to need to be spending at least $5,000 a month on media alone in order to be able to sort of hit the targets for this technology. So if you're not spending $5,000 on media, so if you're an agent, so for me, we do about $5,000 of work and then run about $5,000 of media. That's the sort of tipping point in order to be able to use the technology. Cool. Excellent. Yeah, Joey.
Are there any national brands that are using beacons that are kind of renowned, like Starbucks or something like that? I figured it would be a great place, Starbucks, to use beacons. I don't know who's using them.
Yeah, beacons are, Michael, who has used beacons? There are, yeah, the short answer is yes. And in fact, in that ebook I mentioned, the proximity marketing ebook, it's in there. Virgin, I think. Target has.
About 50 stores nationwide, they're checking it out.
Okay, Target's checking it out. Facebook has something.
But I don't know what it is. I just said we have a client that was invited to be part of a
So what it is,
restaurant.
here's what it is. So beacons have to access the smartphone via an app. Facebook has gotten into an agreement with Apple, if I recall correctly, that they will be one of the apps that pushes messages to people. So I think that technology, that may be what you're talking about, I think that technology is coming down. But more importantly, what Joey's asking is basically, who's doing this? It's being tested, and my premise is that when the consumer goes, wait a minute, I gotta enable Bluetooth, then I gotta say yes that I want this app to download to my smartphone, and maybe sometimes it'll be Facebook, but sometimes it's not gonna be. And then yes, you're gonna push messages to me when I don't want a message. That's a totally different experience than walking into a store and going, oh, let me open up my browser and just sort of see the ratings or reviews, and then there's a little ad at the bottom that just says, hey, by the way, we're selling this product. That's much less intrusive than the other thing. So my take on beacons, and and I'm going to just own up. Yes, one of our clients is talking Wi-Fi, but my take on beacons, even before I got involved with talking Wi-Fi, was who the hell would do all that? I can't believe there's all this buzz going on about beacons. I don't think it's gonna play out the way Apple hopes it is. I could be wrong though. I've been wrong before. For God's sake, when ESPN came out, I was like, who wants 24 hours of sports? Apparently, I was wrong on that one. Cool. Any other questions?
So what specifically is it called? Like, what do you use Waze?
I am familiar with Waze. I don't specifically use it.
So they have, they accept, I mean, I guess they accept advertising from. So on the map, there are sometimes there'll be like little pins.
Mhm.
I mean, you can see like Dunkin' Donuts is one of their.
Yep.
But when you get close to the Dunkin' Donuts, on your screen, and you've got your directions going here, there'll be a little ad that drops down that's got a coupon, and you can actually click it and it'll change the route to take you to Dunkin' Donuts.
Very cool.
So what specific, like what would you call that?
That would be geolocational targeting within a location-based service. So the location-based service is Waze, because it's an app that takes your location into consideration, and then they're doing geolocational targeting, which basically they all do. So Yelp says, oh, you're in downtown Atlanta, here's great restaurants nearby. So it's taking that into consideration, and then they're just overlaying an ad on top of it. So the technology would be geolocational targeting within a location-based service. Or you could just say, hey, Dunkin' Donuts, we'll do an ad for you for people who are near your location. And they'll go, yeah, okay, that sounds great. Cool. Let me wrap up just because I want to be respectful. It's the end of the day and people want to get out of here. Thank you guys very much. I enjoyed it very much. Great questions and I appreciate it. And if anybody needs to reach out to me, my information is up here and I'll be around afterwards if anybody has any questions. Thank you guys very much.